not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
Okay, you kind of called this, Sports Dad, after the second game of the series, that the Warriors were going to make this as ugly and plotting and difficult as possible in the absence of Steph Curry. They did that tonight. The Wolves overcame the ugliness anyways for a 102-97 win in the Bay Area to take a 2-1 lead in this series. We're going to talk about all the important things from this game. I think this game was like 85% frustrating for Wolves fans to watch, but you know what? This is the best defense in the NBA that you are facing. It's one of the best coached organizations. And so for the Wolves to just continue forward, take another game, and keep stacking these wins while Steph Curry is out, those are all good things. So before we get started with our takes, let's talk about MyBookie. MyBookie powering Flagrant Howls post games here during this stretch run.
Yeah, as if the NBA playoffs and Wolves games in particular weren't exciting enough, Sports Day here to give you a way to make them even more exciting. That's right. They can be even more exciting if you've got some action on the game, and MyBookie is the perfect place to do this. Live odds, alt lines, playoff props, right? It is all there. So, like, while you're watching the game, too, you can get a sweat on the game. Absolutely fantastic. MyBookie.ag. Use the promo code Flagrant Howls and bet the playoffs. Deposit $50, get an extra $25. Go bigger with 100, and MyBookie's going to throw in $50. Again, that's MyBookie.ag. Use the promo code Flagrant Howls and get a sweat on a game that's already going to make you sweat. How about that for being in on the action?
Yeah. Well, this one made a lot of people sweat, literally and figuratively here. So I'll throw it to you, Judd. What was your main takeaway from this 102-97 grinded out win against a Steph Curry-less Warriors team?
Well, I'm going to start with this because at halftime he got criticized. I saw on the telecast on ABC. I also saw some folks on Twitter. Second half, Anthony Edwards, okay? Until Anthony has a bad 48 minutes, can we all calm down about him? Because, again, yes, he had a bad first half. He did not contribute much. I get that. Quite frankly, this, again, was a game that was not that much fun to watch for a half. I thought it got progressively more intriguing to watch. But when you look at the final stat line, dude is, 36 points in this game, 5 for 14 from 3, 13 of 28 from the field, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. And I wrote this down because I just want to take you through like an Anthony Edwards snapshot of fourth quarter Ant, because we have had so many athletes, it feels like, in this town who have shrunk when the going gets tough, like the pressure's on, and they shrink and they disappear. And it's like, well, but remember the first quarter? It's like, I don't care about the first quarter. I care about the fourth. But there was a sequence late in this game when the game was still in doubt. Anthony Edwards swings the ball to Julius, who had a marvelous game. Julius swings the ball to Jalen, and Jalen knocks down a 3. It's an enormous shot at that time. Then with about 2:15 left, Kuminga, who had a great night for Golden State, he's been fantastic, Anthony Edwards strips him. Great defensive play. And then Anthony comes back down the court, and Ant makes a 3. That gives him 34 points. But I think we need to calm down about, oh my God, he didn't have 4 great quarters. How long have we longed for guys who, when it's clutch time, and I know that the Wolves were not good in clutch time. Now, Ant was good, but the team was not. But nonetheless, in the second half of this game, when Anthony Edwards had to step up, he stepped up huge. And I think we should appreciate that because we have bitched and moaned a lot about guys that didn't do that.
Real quick, because I also have a couple Anthony Edwards takes. The first play that you outlined in your sequencing there was one that I also outlined. I thought it was one of the biggest plays of the game because that 3 by Jaden, I think it put the Wolves up 7 at the time. It was like it. I just remember it being a pretty close game, and then they run that action, and Jaden hits the 3, and it was like, oh, okay, that feels huge with like 5 minutes to go. And it was some of the best communication and teamwork we've seen since the trade was made back in October. So Anthony Edwards is handling the ball, point Ant handling the ball, kind of top of the key, a little bit like further left of the top of the key. And Julius Randle is out there on the right wing, and he's like signaling to Anthony Edwards, like, hey, I have an idea. He literally says, I'm going to set a screen on your other side and let's run an action. And so Julius runs around the other side of Ant, sets a screen. Anthony Edwards goes left through the screen and then throws it back to Julius Randle, who then swings it immediately to just so. I mean, I'm not an X's and O's guy, but I surmise that Julius said, listen, we have a ton of space on this side of the floor. Let's run this action to the left. You swing it to me. I'll kick it over to one of the guys in the corner. The help defense is going to make it so that someone's open. It was brilliant on the fly communication in a really big spot. Jaden deserves huge credit for knocking that shot down. But I'm really glad you brought that up because I also circled that play like that was a key play. Yeah. And on the Anthony Edwards front, as I'm making notes throughout the game, before the last, he caught that dunk he had with 7 minutes to go in the third. That was the first time he showed fire and energy in the series, to that extent. He's been hurt with the ankle, but he's been super quiet. He hasn't been demonstrative. It almost feels like, rightfully so, he's been trying to mentally figure out what they're doing defensively, and he just, he's been very quiet. His personality has not really been at the front of the series at all. And that dunk, I feel like it was and he flexed on it. He is an emotional, energy-based player, and when he gets it going and he starts feeling himself, so I felt like even though that dunk didn't lead to the insurmountable lead because they were still losing after that dunk, and then they had to dig back even in the fourth quarter. But it felt like from that point forward, he started playing like Anthony Edwards. But before that dunk, my main headline off this game and off the series was that Ant has been awful and rippable for the way he's played in the series. The three-point shot not falling, atrocious at the rim. And the team's been bad at the rim. And he just looks up until halfway through the third quarter. He's just looked kind of shook up against Draymond and Jimmy, and it's not the first team that the Warriors have done that to defensively, but what a credit to Anthony Edwards for the light bulb going on. Maybe figuring some things out, what the Warriors were trying to do to him defensively, and just absolutely exploding his second best offensive performance of the playoffs behind that 43-point game against the Lakers, Judd.
Yeah, and you're on the road in a game that you could have lost. It would have been a bad loss, but you could have lost it. And for him to emerge, and let's not sleep on the fact that it appears playoff Julius Randle is a real thing.
Dude,
which is triple double. Which is shocking because to go back, playoff Julius with the Knicks was known as a liability, and playoff Dante DiVincenzo with the Knicks was known as this really good player. And Dante has done almost nothing. And again tonight had just a terrible game. But Julius tonight had 24 points. He had 12 assists. He had 10 boards. Now he was 1 of 6 from 3, but I feel like there were numerous plays, both scoring and elsewhere, getting big boards and assists, where the good outweighed the bad by a lot. And it just continues to be a revelation that a guy who probably 2.5 months ago you thought, I wonder if they could trade him, what are they going to do, has been absolutely instrumental. And he does give them a snarl that they didn't have. And Gobert, I thought, especially in the second half, altered some things, which is what he does. But Rudy doesn't play with a snarl. Julius does. And I just think I don't think there's any more perfect series than this one for Julius, because it's sort of this whole thing of we're going to play ugly basketball, which is coming from Golden State. But that whole thing to me plays into how Julius wants to play. And it's bully ball. It's down and dirty. It's almost like if this was football, it's almost like Golden State just wants to run the ball. Like they just want to run the ball. And Julius is like, run support's my thing, baby. Let's run. So the impact that Julius Randle has had in the playoffs, and I think especially this series, is enormous. And dare I say that even with Steph hurt, if they didn't have Julius, I don't know they win like tonight's game.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've got some thoughts on the Steph injury too, and just some of the things that the narratives that we've heard. I want to put a pin in those and circle back because
take that offline right now.
We'll take it offline. But just to stay on Julius for a second, yeah, triple double. You know, he obviously has had to sit with his postseason track record going back to New York, mostly New York, for the last couple of years because he didn't play in last year's playoffs with the injury. And so he's been very aware of that. For all the criticism of Karl Anthony Towns in the playoffs, you could argue that Julius Randle had been worse than Karl Anthony Towns going into this season as a playoff performer. And outside of maybe a couple kind of like the 7 turnover game in game 1 against the Lakers, Julius was not great in game 1 against the Warriors. He's been excellent. And it just feels like whether it was the rebounding in the fourth quarter. I mean, how many times did the Warriors had a chance to clean up an offensive rebound, turn a 3-point deficit into a tie game or one, and then out of nowhere, Julius Randle swoops in with a possession-ending rebound. Or whether it's these long stretches where Anthony Edwards can't get his offense, and or the bench guys who we can talk about have just inexplicably gone completely cold offensively, and you're looking around like, someone's got to score some points. If you can just get to 100, you're going to beat this team. And Julius Randle, time and time again throughout these playoffs, has been the guy where, all right, well, I guess we're going to go dormant for 7 minutes. Okay, I'll do my Julius Randle thing, play my bully ball and get into the paint or get to the free throw line or whatever it is. And then the playmaking too. I mean, they're running a lot of the actions through Julius Randle because it's just the way that it makes sense against this Warriors defense. But to your football analogy too, it really, like, I know that you watch the Wolves at their peak offensively and you feel like it's an NFL offense that should score 31 points easily, right? Just go throw the ball down the field. Just hit your 3-pointers and Anthony Edwards, just get to the rim, whatever. But this is an AFC North series here. This is like a Thursday. Every game is like a Thursday night Steelers, Ravens, Browns kind of a thing where it doesn't really matter what the score is. These are not going to be impressive wins. In fact, the Warriors with Steph Curry out have no other way but to spend every waking second scheming defensively against you.
Yeah.
So you've got this incredible coaching staff. You've got two of the all-time great defenders of this generation in Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. Very versatile. They can guard pretty much anyone that the Wolves throw out there. They're running zones. They're playing. I mean, they're doing different things. Like, you're probably not going to score 125 points unless you get white hot from 3-point range. And that's just the reality. Like, if you're waiting for some pretty aesthetically pleasing win against this Warriors team, like, you're probably just going to have to grind these games out and get your way to the Western Conference Finals in ugly fashion.
Yeah, and Butler came through 33 points. But I will say this, and the Wolves played a role too. Butler pulled an ant-like from earlier in the series. Inability to finish at the rim cost his team the game. Now, I credit the Wolves. The Wolves, like, that's the thing. The game within the game of this whole series is defense. And I know that we're, 3-point shots, but if you watch this, everything is defense. And I don't mean like flat out rejections. I mean, you've got to make guys pay. And I mean, Butler, I love Butler. He's a hell of a player, okay? But you can see, I feel like when Ant goes to the rim and misses, his problem is he's trying to draw a foul, but he's going through guys and they're not calling the foul, and then he misses it and he's mad. But I don't feel like it's because he's like hesitant, right? You watch Butler go to the rim. This is a business decision. Like, if he hadn't made business decisions on occasion at the rim, the Warriors win. But he did, and that's a credit to the Wolves because the Wolves were forcing him. He knows he's going to get his block knocked off. So I just thought that was as good as Butler was tonight. I did think that the Wolves' resolve around the rim when he drove was huge. Because quite frankly, aside from, I think it was the third quarter, the Warriors had a brutal 3-point night. 0 for 5 in the first half. First time since 2007 in a playoff game that they've gone a half without a 3-point.
How about that? Yeah.
But I mean, the Wolves get credit there too, because if they had cleared the way for Butler, he probably gets about 43 points.
Yeah, this was. I mean, I took a lot of taunts in the old Twitter @replies for how you jinxed it, Mackey. You brought up playoff Jimmy hasn't shown up in a while, and listen, I'm just I after during our last post game show, I told you really the only way Golden State can win the series is if playoff Jimmy shows up, and he hasn't really shown up much in the last couple of years because he's kind of older now. It's not the same situation as it was 4 or 5 years ago when he was with the Heat.
Yeah, but those Heat teams had some supporting cast, right? Like he's
more than this.
He's literally being thrown in and told, win the game.
Yeah, and this is as close to a playoff Jimmy performance as we've had in 2 or 3 years. 33, 7 and 7. He knocked down a couple big 3-pointers there in the second half. They rode him for 43 minutes in this one, which was pretty wild. But yeah, I think it's going to be really hard for the Warriors to find 100 points in these games. So what do you have to do, Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards? That's what was so frustrating in the first half and early third quarter. It's like, Anthony Edwards, dude.
Right.
I know your ankle's not 100%, but
right.
Figure it out. No one's asking for the team to score 130 here, but you gotta join the party earlier in these games. The Wolves bench, just on the pet peeve side, the Wolves bench, man, Nickeil Alexander-Walker has become near unplayable in these playoffs, and he had that stretch with like 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter where he airballs a wide open 3 in the corner.
Yeah.
And then he blows the layup in transition on the ensuing possession. And it's you can see how frustrated he is. Now I know he dropped the 20 points in the last game and he finally unlocked his 3-point shot, but now he's kind of reverted right back to where he's been for the majority of the last 2 playoffs. And DiVincenzo, man, like he's gone back to like the November, December version of himself where his head was spinning because he's moved to a new city. Just I'm kind of shocked at DiVincenzo not showing up really at all as a playmaker and scorer, at least on offense in these playoffs so far.
Yeah, he was unplayable himself. 1 for 3 from the field for Dante, 0 for 2 from 3. His biggest stat was the 4 personal fouls. He had 2 points. Ugh. I gotta be honest. I think I'm more disappointed in that than I am in Nah, because with Nah, yeah, you definitely like to see more, but DiVincenzo, I guess I was excited to see him in the playoffs, and he'd been playing pretty damn well. And I mean, this is a borderline starter for sure. And I don't know what has happened because I keep expecting him to snap out of it. Like every game, I'm like, okay, and I'm not even talking a great game. I'm just talking about look like you did somewhat in March, and we're not seeing it. But I mean, tonight you won on the road, scored 102 points, and you got 11 points from your bench.
It's crazy.
11 points.
And one of the best benches in the league, too.
And may I again ask, if you're going to get 11 points from your current bench, is Jalen Clark really that bad?
Or Terrence Shannon Jr.?
Okay, yeah, who has played. But I guess my point is, if we had sat down and prepped for the game this afternoon, and I told you, hey, Phil, bench is going to give you 11 points, you'd probably say, okay, that's not good news.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to think on behalf of Chris Finch because people are furious that, Finch has been outcoached by Curry here. The fact that the Warriors are even in these games without Steph Curry is an indictment on Finch. And maybe there's a little bit of that, but if you're Finch, like you literally watched Nickeil Alexander-Walker as one of the best bench players in the league all season, as an offensive initiator, as a 3-point shooter, as a switchable defender, and you watch DiVincenzo since about the All-Star break or whenever he came back from that injury, was it March, whenever it was, just white hot from 3-point range, and it's only been, 8 playoff games. Are you pulling the plug? Like I get why you keep riding these guys because there's been bad 5-6 game stretches before, but that actually like kind of spins into a positive too. The fact that the Wolves are sitting here, second round, up 2-1, they are 2 games away from the Western Conference Finals in back-to-back seasons. And they've maybe only brought their A game once in the playoffs so far. Like maybe game one against the Lakers, but even then there was some stuff, the bench did not score in that game and Julius had 7 turnovers.
Sure.
The fact that they are this far along and they really haven't come anywhere near playing their peak game, like even in a game, let alone a stretch of games or a series, is pretty incredible. Like, what if it all unlocks for 2 weeks or 3 weeks? What can happen?
I would love to know what Finch really thinks, though, because this is the playoffs. Like, I do think in some ways the first round sweep of the Suns last spring was a disservice because the Suns, it turned out, were this aging group that was about to go off the proverbial cliff, and they were awful this season. And I think we thought, oh, okay, that's how, and then the Wolves played Denver. They won the first 2 games, obviously hot. It ends up going 7 games. But I would love to know what Finch thinks about the play of his team. I'm sure there are some things he does not like, including the entire game 1 against Golden State. But I also think there's a reflection here of what the playoffs are like. And so I would like to know what is the, like tonight, what is the happy medium between what you think you could have achieved in the first half, what you did achieve, and then there's the third thing, which is the expectation of why didn't you bury them, which I think is easy to say, harder to do. The first half, in my opinion at least, the first half was awful basketball on both sides. Like it was an absolute, and I do think that the Wolves got caught up a little bit in the opening half in playing the game that Golden State wants to. But I mean, again, the Golden State Warriors in 2025 did not hit a 3-point shot in the opening 2 quarters. Mm-hmm. Like, think about that for a second. If we were doing a Warriors post game right now, and I know that they're down Steph, but think about that for just a moment. 0 for 5 from 3 in 2025. You don't hit a 3. That is also a remarkable statistic.
Well, on the third point that you made, which was like, why aren't they burying this team? And I know, like, that's and every time they kind of they had a 10-point lead at one point, and you're expecting, because there's no Steph Curry, that this should just be a blowout and you should just walk over them and win by 25. And that is so wildly unrealistic. And I don't know where Vegas had this as a 5.5. Wolves favored, but 5.5. So the smartest odds makers in the world are telling you, yes, Steph Curry is out, but this is still a really feisty, well-coached, problem of a basketball team playing in its home arena, desperate to get at least one win in the next 3 so that you can extend the series and maybe get to a game 6 where Steph can play. So Vegas had it 5.5 beforehand. You've got, again, one of the best. You've got a Hall of Fame head coach, one of the best scheming head coaches in the NBA. You've got 2 all-time great defenders in Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green. And you got a couple other dudes like Buddy Hield, Pods, who can get hot. Now, Pods was terrible offensively, but those guys can get hot and hit some threes too. And also, the Warriors are throwing 12, 13. The Warriors have played 15 guys in the series so far.
Yeah.
Tonight, they took your guy Pat Spencer and put him aside for a minute.
Kuminga had 30.
Kuminga, who was benched recently, and now he's back in the rotation. So I think there's way too many people that are looking at this as it's just a bunch of random G League dudes or something. Right. It's this bad team. Right. No, this is the best basketball culture in the NBA right now. This is the best defense in the NBA. And, Steph Curry, not an atrocious defender, but like I don't think you lose a ton of defense with Curry being out. Maybe your defense actually gets better. Your offense certainly suffers. So you're still putting out the best defensive team in the NBA. I just want to squash that notion that this is somehow disappointing that you're not blowing this team out because Steph Curry's not on the court.
Like from the outside world, that it feels like that, and that, to me, that's not the playoffs. Like, to me, and I know that there are blowouts. I know, so yes, I get that. But to me, in a series like this, you're not going to have, could you have one? Absolutely. Game 1 was a disaster for the Wolves. So yes, you definitely could. But like, if you just expect, well, now the Wolves are going to roll through Golden State and it's going to be no problem at all. I don't think you're living world that exists. So I'm with you. And game 1 was terrible, but I think game 2 and game 3 thus far have been workmanlike, efficient enough, not sexy. I don't expect it. And yeah, would I like to see Ant put together a complete game? Of course. I think we all would. But the reality too is Ant would have been, criticized for 2 days if he hadn't done what he did in the second half, particularly in the fourth quarter. And to go back to my point off the top of the show, how many guys have we had in this town where when the going gets tough, they don't come through, and we lament that? I think it's a good talking point tonight that you don't have to lament that because your best player did best player things when you had to have him do that.
Yes. Just like MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning does best HVAC things when you most need them, right?
Yep, exactly right. So when Finch needs to make a call for a great player, it's Ant. When Sportsnet needs to make a call for the greatest plumbing, heating, and air folks in town, it's MSP. Easy. They've done fantastic work at my house. And now I want to tell you about a deal that they have, which is their MSP Total Comfort Club. $8 a month is going to get you a furnace tune-up, a plumbing check, and most importantly now, as it gets warmer, an AC tune-up. So get ahead of the problems before they start. You get priority service, which means if something does go wrong, you're not having to wait a couple of days. And if you do need repairs, you're going to get 10% off service. Again, for $8 a month, that is a heck of a deal. Give them a call, 651-615-4292, or check them out, call MSP.com. Call MSP.com, and you will be glad that you did.
By the way, almost 4,000 people hanging out with us here late in the night on this Saturday on the Score North YouTube channel, this live Flagrant Howls episode. So thank you guys. Please, if you haven't already, click that like button and the subscribe button on the Score North YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this, maybe, I don't know, Sunday morning or something on demand on the audio side, Spotify and Apple, wherever you're listening, a 5-star rating and a positive review can help us keep growing the show here. And you'll hear from our guy Kyle Teige within the next few days as well. Real quick, because we're getting some questions on this in the comment section about the Warrior. Let's see here. Secret Squirrel says Indiana has a better defense than the Warriors. Sid's Ghost says, explain how the Warriors are the best defense. Mackey. Mm-hmm. So since the Jimmy Butler trade, points per possession. So not points per game, let's on a possession basis. The Warriors have the number 1 defense in the NBA. They allow 110 points per 100 possessions, which is about 6 points better than league average. The second best team in the Western Conference is Oklahoma City, followed by Houston, Clippers, and Minnesota since the trade deadline. The second best defense in the league was Orlando. They got bounced. But yeah, I mean, you are, to bring the football analogy back into play here, you're playing a team that gives up 17 points per game and you're pissed that the offense isn't scoring 28 or 31. Yeah. Literally just be happy with the ugly victory. Yeah. And there's definitely some things that need to be ironed out, but some of the things that need to be ironed out are happening specifically because the Warriors are making it that way. The Warriors are making it. I mean, the Warriors are such a pest. And obviously when you add Steph Curry back in, they become a title contender. But in the absence of that, they know how to keep a game close. They know which pressure points to hit on. They know who to put in screen and roll, Naz Reid, and get in isolation. So I just want to clarify that, like statistically, and there's other measurements too. This is the best defense in the NBA, and that's a huge reason why these games are so ugly.
Yeah, absolutely true. And look, if you are a Wolves fan, I got a question for you. Would you take 2 more, what you consider to be 2 close, ugly wins in the next 2 games and get the hell out of Dodge before Curry can possibly return? Because, I mean, that's the best thing. That's the best possible case, right? I don't think Curry is going to come back for Game 6. Old guy with a hamstring, which I'm still not certain he would come back from. But you know what? You can eliminate that even being a talking point. So if you can get 2 more ugly, grinded out wins, which is what that's all Golden State can do. Like, I don't expect this you know what? We're going to go back to our high-flying Splash Brothers ways. Take it and move on and regroup. And, you know, the Western Conference Finals, as we learned a year ago, are another complete pain. Like, that's another conversation. But I'm sorry, man. As a guy who has seen too many teams in this town lose early in playoff series, I don't expect it. I don't expect it to be great. I'll take what I can get, though, as far as wins. And I'm not going to stylistically, like, it's one thing to have the Wolves play Washington and play a close game or lose, right? In January. And you're like, what the hell was that? Unnecessary. When it gets to playoff time, I'm not going to put the same standard there. I'm going to put the standard of, did you win? And if you won, just be quiet and take the win and leave the building.
I think people almost need like a history lesson too in what constitutes an ugly basketball game, because today, I saw this on Twitter here.
Yep.
Today is the 23rd anniversary of perhaps the ugliest modern day playoff game in NBA history.
Yep.
A game in which the Boston Celtics beat the Detroit Pistons 66-64.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
At the Fleet Center in Boston.
Yep.
It was 17-17 after the first quarter.
Yep.
The teams scored 15 and 11 in the third quarter. And your leading scorer on the Pistons side was Jerry Stackhouse, who I believe is an assistant coach for the Warriors.
Very well respected, I guess, now, assistant coach.
Yep, he had 19 points on 19 shots. And then Paul Pierce had 19 points on 23 shots for the Celtics.
Grinded out
in that game. So if you want a real grinded out ugly basketball game, go find that specimen on YouTube somewhere.
Well, how about circa 2000? Those Nets teams that went to the finals playing the Spurs, the ratings were tanked because that was honestly some of the worst basketball, including the 80s, because at least there were some, high profile. You had Magic and you had Bird and then Jordan, right? But do you remember those series? And it's like the Nets got good, and it's like these teams are unwatchable. So, yeah. I'm not complaining. I find it, ironic might be the incorrect term, but I find it to be amusing that we are now in this town with a team that's threatening to go to the Western Conference Finals in back-to-back years, which, by the way, praise the Lord, right? I find it funny that we are, like we've had the Twins get bounced for how many years? My team, the Wild, being bounced for how many years? And now we're stylistically critiquing wins as if we know in Minnesota what a playoff win should look like.
And I get that, like, some of it, the aesthetic critiquing is ridiculous if it is within the spirit of I'm critiquing this element because if it doesn't change, you're not going to advance beyond, whatever. Like, I'm all for that conversation. Can we have a Steph Curry conversation? I want to ask you your thoughts on because you know what's going to happen. What they should do is just win the next two games so that you don't have to worry about him coming back for game 6 and just be done with it. But if that happens, or even if it does go to a game 6 or he comes back in game 5 or game 6 and you win, but he's kind of hobbled still and he didn't play in some of the other games, you know that this is setting up, no matter what, for an asterisk among NBA analysts and for sure Warriors fans that, well, hey, Mr. Legend Killer over there, it doesn't count. This pelt doesn't count on the wall because Steph hurt his hamstring.
Right.
And could I offer a dissenting opinion on that and say that we're talking about a 37-year-old player who played 46 minutes in a hard-fought Game 7 against Houston in the first round after playing 40-plus minutes in multiple other games in that series, and then a 48-hour turnaround until Game 1. This is what happens to old players. Like, guess what happened to Larry Bird way before age 37? His back hurt. He couldn't play full games. Well, yeah, but what would have happened if Larry Bird had been healthy?
Yeah,
sorry, his back hurts.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah.
What would have happened if it's
You know what? I have as much sympathy for the Golden State folks as they would for the Wolves if Ant got hurt. Like this is what happens in playoffs. Like this is my whole point. Playoffs are in especially I think this is especially true in basketball and hockey. Playoffs are brutal. Guys get hurt constantly. Like you can't it can't be like, well, but what if that team had been 100%? Very rarely in playoffs do you have that luxury. Like this is the ebb and flow. And quite frankly, you know what? If you want to throw the blame on Golden State, like you're sort of doing, the reality is this. Houston forced it to 7 by winning 2 consecutive, but by winning in 5 and 6.
Yeah.
If Golden State really
close
wanted
them out.
exactly. So yeah, I got no, and I think the most important thing is in future years, if the Wolves do indeed reach the conference finals, or perhaps go beyond that, no one is going to look at the record books and say, hold on a second here, how is Steph Curry? Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No sympathy. And look, if Ant's ankle starts to bark and he can't play, that's fair too. That's just how the playoffs work.
Being able to withstand the grind of another 2 months physically, mentally, is a skill. It's a skill. When Luka Doncic is exhausted in the NBA Finals and Jaylen Brown is picking him up full court up and down, and his body literally like can't perform at the level that it did a month prior because of physical exhaustion or whatever it is.
Yes.
Can you come back and say, well, listen, Boston, what would happen if Luka were fully, his gas tank were, it wasn't. And you know what? I would say this. If Steph was 29 or 30 years old, kind of like the Durant situation where he tears his Achilles tendon in his prime, the Warriors were going to win that NBA Finals. He's not supposed to get hurt in that fashion at that age. It's not an age where you would expect a guy to like have his body fail on him once you get into the grind of the playoffs. That's kind of an asterisk. I mean, the Raptors fans aren't going to say that, but okay, that steps out of line with what usually would happen. But once players get into their mid-30s, or in this case, again, 37 years old, it is unlikely that you're going to feel great or be anywhere near healthy or even be available to play at a high level in the postseason. So I would argue that the anomaly would be if Steph Curry were fully healthy all the way through a 2-month playoff stretch relative to NBA history at age 37, playing 46. And when you play him 46 minutes in a game 7 with a 2-day turnaround, flying to Minneapolis, and now you got to hit the gas in game 1, I'm sorry, but like you're sort of tempting fate. So I just want to get out in front. I don't want to hear anything about, Steph Curry.
Well, you will hear it, but who cares? Like, it's just to me, I don't care. Like this is how it goes. And you know what? Jimmy Butler very well could be affected on Monday by how much he played tonight.
Yeah.
Because he's not a kid either. But this is also what happens to teams like Golden State who once achieved greatness and then continue to try to what's the term? Bleed the turnip from that same group. Or they get Jimmy Butler in. Let's bring in Jimmy Butler. Okay, that's great. And if this was a fantasy basketball league team, it'd be a fun discussion. But the reality is these guys age. And to go back to your point too, remember I thought, and it was a very smart thing, when the Wolves lost in the Western Conference Finals to Dallas last year, how much did Ant talk about? And it wasn't an excuse. He said, I didn't realize how much this took. Like I am, and he's like, I am fried, which this is an interesting discussion because I do wonder, they've talked about, and I think Finch has talked about this a lot, the maturity of Ant. Like he's matured as a basketball player. He's matured in his decisions on the floor. And I do wonder if the fact that he doesn't look like himself constantly does have a little bit to do with him purposefully knowing what he needs to do to win a little bit. Now the first half was bad, so I'm not making an excuse for that. But I am saying, to go back to last year, he came away from the Dallas series, I thought, with some very mature comments about, I didn't know what this took. Like, we got to that round and I hit a bleeping wall. He's hurt as well. That's something else with the ankle. But like that fourth quarter tonight was so sort of savvy and smart, and he popped up there. I wonder if he knows I can't expend being that guy for 4 quarters every playoff game.
So
Just
save
a
a
thought.
little. Maybe he's learned to save a little something for the third and fourth quarters.
As Seth here says, you're saying that he is pacing himself. Seth Kimball. Yes, I'm saying he's pacing himself. I'm also saying that he's also trying to make plays as well at times.
Yeah.
He's not nearly as intent on hijacking games. But I did find it intriguing that in the fourth quarter, he basically he hit the throttle, and he hadn't hit the throttle previously. And I wonder if that is more thought out than we think, because our take is, well, he just didn't play well for 2 quarters or 3 quarters.
Another kind of just like a different thought on this. Tim Legler was the color commentator, right?
Yep.
Oh, Legs is great, by the way.
Yep.
And I'm glad that he's calling more games now instead of just being stuck in a studio. But he made a point that with that ankle injury, and Legs was one of the great 3-point shooters of the kind of early mid 90s. He led the league in 3-point percentage in a year.
Yeah.
But he said with that injury, it might be harder for Ant to get that step back. I mean, the step back 3 has been his bread and butter. He's the best step back 3-point shooter in the entire league.
Yep.
That it's harder to get to that shot with a bad ankle, and maybe he was feeling some of that out too in the first half. But I wouldn't be shocked if the sports dad is right on this. That maybe we're sitting here like, why doesn't he? It's like, okay, there a couple games ago, it's like, need you to score more than 1 point in the first half. So let's not take it to that extreme. But
well, and that was a terrible game just for the entire team. But I do think that there's probably more thought process going on through this entire team than we think. And look, if they had won by 25, we'd all be happy. We'd be doing this show talking about they kicked the Warriors' ass, right? But do you really think as a team they leave that building tonight saying, we didn't win by 25?
No, because I guarantee
I'm very disappointed.
There is no universe in which they think they're going to beat even a Steph Curry-less Warriors team by 25 points.
Yep.
Zero chance. The amount of things that would have, and this is a different take. When I'm watching the Wolves and Lakers, I have a different take on it. Because I think when you have a lifeless defender on the court like Luka Doncic and LeBron James, who's 40 years old and kind of hit or miss, and you've got better athletes than the rest of their players, you can blow that team out. You're not blowing this team out. I would be shocked if they pulled a 20-point victory. Now, I know that they kind of did in game 2, but that was like more toward the end.
Yeah, you're saying like a decisive 4-quarter.
You're up at halftime by 19 points or something.
Yeah,
yes.
I got you.
So we'll see. Maybe I reverse jinxed it. And
don't forget, too, if they advance, and I like their chances a lot right now, there's still another round to go that's going to be incredibly tough.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you get past that, there's another round to go. So, like, this is the whole thing about some type of pacing, some type of thought process where you definitely want to win. You don't want to take it for granted. But I feel like as fans, we're just like, well, you should blow that team out.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure Golden State fans are all ticked off too. I mean, fans, we see things from the outside. So we're all like, well, yeah, but the deficiency here and there. And I don't think that's how teams operate.
Yep. So, all right, well, that was a festive episode here. It was a festive second half for the Wolves. Any other final thoughts from you, Judd, before we part ways for the night here and start to look ahead to Game 4?
No, just thank you. The Flagrant Howls crowd continues to be fantastic.
Yeah.
It's 11 o'clock awesome. On a Saturday night. A Saturday night is not ordinarily a good viewing night. So, no, thank you to you guys for tuning in and watching us.
Yes. I would say the only other thing kind of left on my notes that we didn't talk about much is Draymond Green fouling out with 4.5 minutes left and playing the victim all night again. A little bit of a ticky-tack 6th foul, but Legler pointed out, dude, you got your hand on Jaden McDaniels' hip the entire time down.
Well, but
he has zero self-control on the basketball court.
But what was nice coming off Game 2 is he was sort of compromised, though. Like he played victim and he got mad once, but he has to be super careful. So like at the end of the day, the game 2 meltdown helped the Wolves
Yeah.
because it definitely got Draymond to pull his punches verbally. And that's a guy who, if he does that, he changes his style. He's less effective when he can't be as big an a-hole.
Yeah, he's definitely he's riding the roller coaster, man. Like he's at the end of that Rockets series, he's talking to all of his family and friends, and he's a new man. And then 5 minutes into the Wolves series, he's back flailing and elbowing Naz Reid, like this dude. And he's the stuff we didn't even talk about this because it happened after we jumped off mic, but for him to sort of now listen, like I could never put myself in the shoes of a black man in America, right. So I'm not going to comment on that thing. But like him essentially saying that the portrayal of me is all, it's like, dude, like you're out there elbowing guys on purpose,
right?
Night after night after night. You have to take some culpability in the way that people view you. So,
yeah. And he's old too.
He's got more gray on his.
He's an old man
on his head and beard than he did in the first round. It feels like.
Absolutely.
So, all right, he's the sports dad, Judd. I am Phil. We appreciate you guys. Again, click that like button and the subscribe button if you could to help us keep growing the Score North YouTube channel. And we love doing these post game shows. The Wolves are 2 wins away from back-to-back trips to the Western Conference Finals. We'll see you guys after Game 4. This is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.